We're very pleased to welcome to the studio Ron Kaufman, author of the New York Times bestseller Uplifting Service, a copy of which has just been handed to me. It looks rather smart. Uplifting Service, the proven path to delighting your customers, colleagues and everyone else you meet. Very good morning to you, Ron. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Malcolm.
Delight me.
Delight you. Well, the first thing I'd have to do is get clear with the listeners and with you about what is it to delight somebody. It means giving them a great service experience. But what is service? Service is taking action to create value for someone else. So if you want me to delight you, Malcolm, I've got to first start with understanding you, getting to know you. What do you care about? What are you concerned about? Then I can decide what action to take that will create that value for you at a high enough level that you'd say, wow, I'm delighted.
Even if you didn't really know what that was, how do you actually find out what people want? I think that's one of the key questions.
Well, for example, with you, since you're the one that asked me to delight you, I'd say you're a radio interviewer, and what you want is a guest who's going to be animated, who's going to be energetic, who's going to answer your questions well, who'll stimulate your listeners to want to call in. So I want to find out who you are. I want to do some research. I want to do some creative thinking about what it is that matters to you so that I can design an action that you will appreciate.
So this is ticking the what's in it for me box.
What's in it for me being the other person.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So how do you define good service, though, on a broader scale? Because clearly you're not going to know all the customers of an organisation. You kind of got to guess the profiles. They'll give you some information. So what are the key points of good service to you?
Well, you do fundamental market segmentation and you identify what different customers appreciate. The fundamentals of good service still come back to the definition, taking action that someone else will value. So let's look at Dubai as a city. You're going to be hosting Expo 2020. The whole world comes here. I flew in here this morning and have been here many times. What do people want when they come to Dubai? They want a great experience. They want a wonderful convention. They want good shopping. They want excellent food. They want safety. They want efficiency. So there are many characteristics that you can zoom into. But if you want to differentiate yourself as an organization that's better than the competition, then what you've got to do is get a little more discerning about how you're going to deliver that value, that service, so that you stand out from others in your industry.
In the first part, we were talking a little bit about delighting people and understanding what everybody else wants. And the people that I see doing really well as entrepreneurs are the people with high level of intuitive, emotional intelligence.
Yes.
The people who really do understand what the other person wants
Right.
and what they're looking forward to. Is that something which has to be hereditary, or can it really be learned?
Oh, it can not only be learned, but you can actually build a culture where that becomes a distinguishing characteristic of what it's like to work in that organization and what it's like to be served in that organization. So what you were referring to, Malcolm, it would be high EQ, somebody who cares about other people, who's attentive to other people's concerns and needs. How do you design a culture where that's the way people are thinking when they come to work each day? They don't just come to work saying, I'm here to do my job. They say, I'm here to do my job, and I get that my job is about doing something that someone else will value or appreciate. And what we do is help companies figure out how do you design a culture of that. Or for Dubai, how do you make the whole city a group of service providers who are passionate to make that the experience that Dubai is known for?
So what are some of the common answers to that, some of the common suggestions?
Yes, the architecture for engineering the development of a service culture involves three major components. One of them is a leadership level issue. Consider it like the roof on the house. The second is education. We have to teach people what does it mean to give great service? What are the skills they need to learn? What are the points of view? What are the ways to think about service situations? That's a foundation. And then in the middle is something called building blocks. And this is all of what I talk about in the book. So for example, who do you recruit? How do you orient them? How do you recognize and reward your staff? So senior leaders in an organization have to take this service issue seriously. Their job is to design a service culture in the organization that will make the customer experience stand out from the competition and will also make the employee experience one that is actually an advantage. People like to work there.
But I guess you can design this whole infrastructure, but the fact of the matter is that most people on the shop floor, so to speak, globally are on pretty low wages.
Yes.
So are our expectations too high? Raoul mentions this point. He said, why are customer folk paid the least in an organisation? It's the same around the globe. So are our expectations too high, given the fact that the wages are pretty low? So maybe, that could hold against against good service in shops?
I think high expectations are good. High expectations of customers, high expectations as well of employees. Now, when you get an organizational culture that makes people feel good about coming to work, that's why I call it uplifting service, not only for the customer, but also for the service provider. Then, let's face it, in the economics of certain businesses, you're not going to be able to pay the frontline service provider a higher salary, but you want to create for him. In fact, it's your responsibility as a leader to create for your team, for your employees, for your staff, the kind of culture where they're inspired to come to work, where they will give a great service experience even if they're not at the top of the pay chain.
So you might be able to do that in a smaller organisation. You're starting off, you're very enthusiastic, but how do you maintain that? A lot of the economy here is SMEs, as you know. So you may have it right at the beginning, but how do you keep rolling that out as the company gets bigger, when maybe you lose touch with the people on the front line, on the shop floor so much?
Yeah, that's where the fundamental architecture starts to become so important, where you've got to be recruiting the right people into the organization, making sure that new people who join you are oriented into the culture that you're committed to. So as your head count grows from small SME to larger mid-size or even very large organization, that you can be responsible for preserving and growing that culture.
I mean, this sounds like a utopian ideal, to be honest with you, Ron. I mean, recruiting the right people, making sure people are happy to come to work, giving the best service on not great salaries. Life isn't really like that. I mean, which companies have you seen, outside maybe some of the biggest and wealthiest, that fulfill those ideals?
Well, the biggest and the wealthiest and the ones that really stand out that people know, Ritz-Carlton Hotel, whether you're talking about the new JW Marriott Marquis here, I just checked in this morning. It's an extraordinary experience and culture. I can tell the staff are delighted to be working there. Singapore Airlines has been known for that for years. If you go online, you look at Zappos.com, a global reputation. What are they doing? Creating a great place to work, where people feel like they're in service to each other as colleagues, and collectively what we share is a commitment to service to customers. But Malcolm, customers also have a responsibility. In customer service, there's two sides to the equation. There's the service provider, who should know what to do and do it well and be in a culture that supports them. But the customer can also have a profound impact on the quality of service that they get. And that comes from being a better customer, being appreciative, being a little bit patient, being the person who says thank you, being the person who wants to know the service provider's name and use it. Those small gestures of respect and appreciation from a customer will definitely pay back in the quality of service you receive.
That's an American thing. Culturally, that doesn't necessarily work here. There's sort of first name terms with people that serve you. It doesn't really work.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be first name terms. It could be simple body language. It's the courtesy of an eye contact. It's when somebody is completed serving you that you say, thank you, I appreciate your help today, rather than just, and walking off with your credit card.
Which is so common, of course.
I think courtesy is a universal thing that everyone would agree with. But I did want to come back to cultural differences, because obviously Dubai is that little bit different here. Many big cities have the same issues, but a lot of different cultures see different things as good service. Some may see a good returns policy as service, some may see product knowledge, and so the list goes on. So,
yes.
So how do you marry all those different wants with a service provided to a very multinational population
So
here?
Sarah, what you've done is you've asked, what are the elements that constitute the experience that customers value? And there are four. One of them we call the primary product. Is the product innovation good? Are the features good? Is the price good? The second is called the delivery system. Is it convenient? Is it fast? Is it easy to do business with you? The third is the category that's called service mindset. Is the person friendly, helpful, considerate? That's what most people think of when they hear the word service, but it's only 1/4 of the overall experience. And the fourth category is called ongoing relationship, which is where the interaction you have with another person is not just about making the sale. It's not just about a moment of transaction. It's about caring, why are they doing the transaction? What do they want to achieve in their life? And how can I engage with them to ensure that they get that? Whether it's a follow-up phone call, or it's additional follow-up service, or it's simply, as a person's about to walk out of the store, making sure that they understand how to get most value from what it is that they bought.
Somebody's texted in, Ray's texted in, saying, what about combining a product with a service? I want to start a coffee shop, but the attraction should be the service, not the product. And how big is the customer service in that sort of mix that you've just gone there, that 4-part mix? If you had an average product, could you, for instance, outperform Starbucks on the basis of the fact that people really want to go there because you're nice to them?
Right, you could absolutely do that. For example, of course, Starbucks would be a very high threshold to go compete against,
of course,
because they've designed such an experience. They have that full range of product innovation. motivation. They serve you quickly at the counter. They've got friendly people behind the counter. And then there's the whole relationship where they want you to come back, which is why they call it the third place. You have your home place, you have your workplace, and then you have Starbucks, which is your third place. But could somebody compete in a commoditized environment, is I think what you're asking, Malcolm. Your product, my product, they're the same. How do I stand out? I need to differentiate in some way that's experiential for the people that I serve. So it could be highly personalized service, or it could be that we're the fastest service provider, or it could be that we're the most flexible and give you the widest range of options. Now, which one should you do? Well, it goes back to our definition of service, taking action to create value for someone else, which means what does the someone else appreciate? What do they want? That's where you should differentiate.
Now, one of the things that people have an issue with in this country and elsewhere, but particularly here, is upselling, because this template has been given on high of that is what constitutes good customer service. And somebody's mentioned here, until we see autonomy and ability to think and move away from maybe these misguided templates, we're not going to get good customer service.
Well, we absolutely need to go back to where this upselling thrust is coming from, trying to make more money. What we want is not upselling. What we want is people who are intentionally up buying. People who say, I enjoyed buying from you. I'll come back and buy from you again. Gee, you helped me out so much to choose the right thing this time. When you make a recommendation of something else, I feel like you actually have my best interest in mind, because you as the service provider have taken a moment to understand me, not just that you're trying to push another piece into the sale to make more money for you. What goes around comes around. So the more you make an effort to give somebody else what they will really appreciate, it will come back around and support you too.
Well, Ron, I'd like to say we've appreciated your service today. Thank you very much indeed.
It's been a pleasure to be with you. I come to Dubai often, and I'll be back again soon.
Ron Kaufman, author of the New York Times bestseller Uplifting Service. Don't forget, you can get the first part of that book free of charge on upliftingservice.com.